We are live. Nikunji, you can begin.
You're not playing the video?
No, there is some issue.
Okay. Namaste and good evening. A very warm welcome to all the viewers for the 31st online interactive session Samvada brought to you by Virat Hindustan Sangam, Karnataka. In our 30th Samvada, we have Acharya Srindri S. Paiti, who spoke on Vaisheshika Sanatana Darshana, a very well-researched talk on Samvada. And today we have a very hot topic, which is going national on all TV debates by an IT professional and a person who does studies on comparative religion, Shri Pankaj Sahay, who will speak on belief systems and Article 25, the right to freely practice belief and religion. Let me give you a small brief on today's speaker. Pankaj focuses on technology, intellectual property, and policy in the IT sector. He has contributed to new standard developments at the ISO, International Standard Organization, and to formulating policy positions at the national level. After graduating from IIT Kanpur, he obtained a doctoral degree from IISc Bangalore, a diploma in cyber laws from Nalsar, Hyderabad. He has taught data science at several private universities. He has been studying comparative religion and writing as a columnist over a period of several years. I'm also joined by Gopi Ji, our General Secretary, Tejas Ji, the man who's behind the whole show, and my co-host Alok Gaddi. I now invite and request our guest speaker, Pankaj Ji, to start this evening's program with his talk on belief systems and Article 25, the right to freely practice belief and religion. Over to Shri Pankaj Ji. Thank you.
Namaste. Namaste to all the viewers. Namaste to Nikunji, Gopi Ji, Tejas, and Alok Gaddi Ji. It is a great pleasure and privilege to be on your channel and on your program. And I hope we will have a good session today. This topic is a hot topic, and there's a lot of different opinions going about it, and not everyone is well informed. So I thought that this is a good place where one can begin. So can we get into our slide deck, please? Okay, so I hope this slide deck is visible. Right. So we are going to talk about belief systems and Article 25, freedom of conscience and religion. So I'll just run you through the agenda of this talk. So first, there will be a brief motivation as to why. Then coming to the substantive part, which is Article 25. What is the case law and the judgment of the Supreme Court, which was filed, the case was filed by Reverend Stanislaus, excerpts from the judgment and discussion. Then we will read Article 25 and give some, analogies in layman's language. What are the implications for citizens? Extra constitutionality of the belief systems. What are some differences between Dharma, dharmic systems, and the belief systems, the converting systems? What is secularism as per the constitution? What can citizens do? So let's get started. Okay, so Article 25 is the substantive article on freedom of conscience and religion. There are two objects here. One is conscience and the other is religion, which remained unchanged. The 42nd Amendment introduced the word secular in the preamble, but this article remained. Now, the genesis of secularism, it comes from the Christian world. Essentially, the church had all the powers, it could excommunicate kings, it could do what it wanted, people had to obey it, and so on. So, what happened was the Christian world wanted to come out of this and come out of the so called divine law systems. And that was when they sort of stumbled upon this concept called secularism and democracy. So they went through a whole period of dark ages, enlightenment, the rights of man, and so on. We will not get into all that here. Now, the point is the practice in India and the narrative is very different, from what one expects about secularism. So it has turned out to be a platform for anti nationals, anti Hindu activities, extra constitutional practices, and so on. And the courts, it appears, so many of the judges, though not all, it appears that they are acting on their whims and fancies, and they decide, whatever they decide has to be followed. The other thing is, it is very instructive to see the Constitution of India in Hindi and what is the translation or transliteration of the word secular in Hindi. So let's get into this. So, some observations. The church essentially is a hierarchical system, and the Roman pontiff claims to be a representative of the Christians, but the bishops of India, they obey the nuncio, who is not elected by any Indian people or Indian Christians rather. And unlike China, uh, which knows how to deal with this, the Indian state is not doing anything about it. Okay, so let's get into Article 25, which has two parts. So there is Article 25, subsection 1. It talks about freedom of conscience, and the second part is about religion. So here, the important thing that we should keep in mind is that the ones in boldface is what one should focus on. All persons are equally entitled. So this equal entitlement is very important, as we will see. Equally entitled to freedom of conscience and the right freely to profess, practice, and propagate religion. So the whole issue is arising out of propagate, the word propagate, and what does it mean, what it does not. And for the sake of completeness, and we will not get into any issues regarding this part, Article 25(2) gives the government of India certain powers for regulating secular activity but not religious activity. So that is the second part of Article 25. And it can intervene and open certain Hindu places to all classes of Hindus, but not to any other people from some X, Y, or Z religion. So now let us see what is the constitution in Hindi. It says Dharm ke swatantrata ka adhikar, antakaran. So antakaran is conscience, and as we all know, it can belong only to a human being, a person. So that is important because the church or any entity does not have antakaran, it doesn't have a conscience. And therefore, this article, Article 25, is a fundamental right given to the human being, that is, to the citizens, not to an entity which is a corporate body or an institution or a church. Now, this is the judgment which was delivered in 1977 by a five-judge constitutional bench. The case was filed by Reverend Stanislaus versus the state of Madhya Pradesh and others, which went into what is the scope of Article 25. And Reverend Stanislaus, as you can imagine, he wanted to claim that the right to convert is a fundamental right or a right simply because being a Christian, they would want to go about that, and that is a defining feature of the Christian and Muslim Islamic religion. So let us look at this. So this is quoted word by word and line by line from the directly from the judgment of the Supreme Court. So held. Now let's look at the second paragraph. The word propagate has been used in the article. So the meaning is transmission or spreading. Okay. And you see the last paragraph. Article does not grant the right to convert other person to one's own religion, but to transmit or spread. Okay. So conversion is different. Transmission and spreading is different. And propagate, the meaning is transmission and spreading, not conversion. That is the point, and this is directly the judgment of the Supreme Court. So now let us see another aspect of Article 25, which is the equal entitlement part in Article 25. So now the Supreme Court judgment says that the freedom of religion is guaranteed. Look at the boldface item, second line, one religion only, but covers all religions alike. So this part is important, that the freedom covers all religions, not only a few of them alike. And that alike is a very important point because all religions are different and all their claims and fundamental principles are different. But this freedom can only be given in the same way as you give one for the same thing you have to give to the other. So see the last paragraph, and this it is instructive to read directly from the judgment of the court. What is freedom for one is freedom for the other. Okay, in equal measure, right? That is important, and there can therefore be no such thing as a fundamental right to convert any person to one's own religion. So there you have it, and this is directly from the judgment of the Supreme Court. So you can't really have missionaries because the mission is conversion. Now, the second aspect of Article 25, again from the judgment on the word propagate, the court went into it and said it is not in the biological sense, and it looked at the dictionary meanings, etc. And it concluded that they have no doubt that the sense is essentially dissemination and not conversion. So the SC judgment now we are talking about another aspect, and this is very important because, as I said, Article 25 has two aspects to it. The first part addresses freedom of conscience, which is not the same as religion. And the second part of that addresses the freedom to do with religion. Okay, so let us see, this is exactly what the Supreme Court has said. The freedom of conscience is to every citizen, and this everything and equal entitlement is a repeated important feature right through, not merely to followers of one particular religion, obviously the one which wants to convert and claims exclusively you have to convert only into my religion. So then it says, and that in turn postulates that there is no fundamental right to convert another person to one's religion, that we have seen. And now the court is giving reasons, and these reasons are very important because then one can see that there is no right to convert somebody else into one's own religion. So let us see these last 3 points a little carefully. So it says, because if a person purposely undertakes the conversion of another person to his religion as distinguished, so there is a distinction from his effort to transmit or spread the tenets of his religion, that would impinge on the freedom of conscience. So that means if you try to convert, you yourself are impinging on Article 25 and you are striking at the root of Article 25. That would impinge on the freedom of conscience guaranteed to all the citizens of the country alike. Okay, so this alike and all the citizens, these phrases, these words are very important because the whole point is uh, the converting religions, obviously they discriminate, and the moment they try to convert, they are striking at Article 25 itself. Why? Because that would impinge on the freedom of conscience the moment you try to convert. So there we have it. So now uh, we would have heard so many things, like words like, for example, essential practices. So now what does this judgment mean finally? What does it imply? It means that so far as the converting religions are concerned, they strike at Article 25 itself. So if that is fundamental, then how can that be allowed? Obviously, it can't be allowed, and that religion also cannot be allowed. If essential practices are protected, if the court says, okay, this is an essential practice of the religion, so we must protect it. Well, no, you can't. And here is a direct example, because conversion in a proselytizing religion is obligatory and fundamental. And obviously, it is the defining feature and the most essential practice. But obviously, the court has not protected it. In fact, it has gone ahead to say that doing so will strike at Article 25 itself. So then we cannot accept that. And then, if the essential practice is a defining feature of the religion itself, the religion comes prepackaged with this defining feature, which is against the very tenets of the constitution and against the Article 25 itself, then how can one recognize that religion or that system in the first place? That is the point. Okay. So now I will just give you some analogy. So suppose there's a transport, a taxi or a bus, and you are going somewhere. In this case, let us say the transport is a vehicle, which is the church, for example, or the Islamic Authority, for example, and that obviously the believers are all going to heaven because they are believers, and that is the system. Now, the point is, normally speaking, can one get off the cab and change the vehicle, or simply get off and do what you want? Of course, you can. That is the point. That is your right. So, but then if your vehicle or your taxi driver or bus driver refuses to let you get off and says, no, once you are in my cab, you have to go wherever I'm taking you. So in this case, you are going to heaven and you'd better go there. You don't have a choice. So if you can't get off that bus, then what does it mean? That means you're kidnapped, right? So this is the analogy I'm making, that it is the believers in these proselytizing systems who are effectively, like kidnapped people, because they don't have any right to move out of the system or even to question it. So now there are two entities. One is the citizen and the other is the authority, which wants to convert, or which is the system, the church or Islam or whatever it is. So let's see what are the implications for citizens and the implications for the system, which is, for example, the church. So now for the citizens are divided into two parts by the converting systems as believers and non-believers. We all know that. So for believers, it is mandatory to stay in the system. They cannot doubt, they cannot question, they have to follow the prescription which is given. And if you question or deviate, then it's a punishable offense. And that is the point. So it is not that if you have a different point of view or if you question in this system, you have committed an offense which is punishable. And for example, you have punishments for heresy, blasphemy, or you have the death penalty, sartan se juda, all those kind of things. Okay. And their own systems designate their own believers, their own followers as sheep or slaves. And that is the point, because they have given up their own right to freedom of conscience. One, they are in that system. We saw that from uh, the fact that they are not allowed to query, they are not allowed to doubt or deviate or do what they want according to their conscience, as long as they are not following the diktat. So the question arises, if the right to freedom of conscience itself is destroyed by the church or whatever system, or it is surrendered to the church, so the citizen, that is the believer in this case, doesn't have it. So you have given up your right, or it has been destroyed anyway. Then how are they citizens in the first place? That is the question. And let us see something which Dr. Ambedkar has noticed and he has written in his book. Conversion to Islam or Christianity will denationalize the depressed classes. So see the word here, denationalize. And see this, the last paragraph. If the right to freedom of conscience is destroyed, then how are they full citizens? So it's the same question, and the observation by Dr. Ambedkar himself is given here. So suppose now, instead of citizens who are believers, we have seen that case. The second case is citizens who are non-believers. Typically, most people, and in India, most people are non-believers. They are Hindus or Jews or Parsis. They may be believers in their systems, but for these converting systems, they are non-believers. Okay, variously called as heathen, infidel, kafir, whatever. Now they mandate. So far as the non-believers are concerned, what does the church or the system, that is Islam, say? That the non-believers, that is the kafir, necessarily now you have to come to my system and my true God, and everything about me is true, everything about you is false, and only into my system. right? So there is no freedom even for the non-believers as far as that system is concerned. So now what do we see? Finally, the net result is the insiders, that is, who are the believers, insiders cannot go out, and the outsiders are not free to be themselves or go elsewhere wherever they want. So for both the people, insiders and outsiders, that is for the believers and also for the non-believers who may be dharmics or any other religion, this system violates Article 25 because now here there is a compulsion, there is a mandate. Nobody is free. Neither the believer is free nor the non-believer. Non-believer technically should have nothing to do with that system. I don't want to do anything with the system. I don't know about the system. But even then, the system says, no, 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 you have to follow me. That is it. And finally, all said and done, you have to come to me and only me. So that means Article 25 is violated by these kind of systems for every citizen, for all persons on earth, right? So now you have a system which violates Article 25, and here I have just put down some properties. Just let us just look at the last bullet point in black and in boldface. The worst believer is going to heaven in spite of committing any crimes. Why? Simply because he believes in the true God and the system, and is still better than the most noble or pious non-believer who will still go to hell. So this is their concept, and this is the way they operate, and they are pre-decided on this. It has nothing to do with evidence. It has nothing to do with due process. It has nothing to do with what anyone does. Simply because someone is a believer, that person is going to heaven, and even on earth, that person has all the rights, and the non-believer is obviously facing various things which are basically anything from harassment to total elimination. So so the proselytizing system, basically, they are systems which divide humanity purely on religious belief, and they are fundamentally unequal because their starting point is believer non-believer, and that is a prescribed religious belief, and that is the starting point and the core of the identity. So they are fundamentally unequal. So they violate Article 25 in addition because they themselves are fundamentally unequal as they are defined and as their fundamental principles show them to be. Not only that, these systems assume the role of an extra constitutional authority because they are handing out punishment, sartan se juda, whatever, excommunicating people, and so on and so forth. So the question arises, can the state recognize a system which is fundamentally, by definition, in this case, unequal on purely religious grounds? And it violates Article 25, as we have seen, apart from other violations. So that is the question. And let us see what is the status of these systems in terms of Articles 14 and 15, equality before the law. So the state has to grant everyone equality before the law, equal protection of laws, and discrimination on grounds only of religion is prohibited. So if the state recognizes such a system, or the church, then the state will directly or vicariously be liable for this kind of discrimination. Okay. Now, not only Article 25, but if we take a look at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, there are many of them which have been studied here, and you can take a look at this, the last link on certain systems and their violations of fundamental rights. Now, as far as UDHR is concerned, I'm just putting out one article which is violated here, and this is very important. Again, this is instructive. Nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, group, or person. Okay, state, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or to perform any act, which we are talking about. The act is conversion, the act of conversion, aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms set forth herein. Obviously, the rights and freedoms will be destroyed because after conversion, the believer doesn't have any freedom to question or move out, and and the non-believer doesn't have any freedom to go anywhere. So obviously conversion, the activity, the act of conversion is aimed at the destruction of the rights which you already have as a citizen, and which this system doesn't allow at all. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 30, bars this kind of activity. Okay. So here I'm just listing some fundamental principles and essential practices of Sanatan Dharma. So basically, the belief systems, there is a believer and he has been given a command by the true God. So there are two entities. One is the believer and he is obeying the diktats of the true God. Whereas in Dharma, essentially it is me, I choose, I seek, I want to obtain moksha, I discourse, and so on. All our shastras or granths, so many of them essentially are about dialogue, they are about discourse. There's nothing about diktat and decree or anything of the sort. And essentially, Sanatan Dharma is self governing uh, compared to the proselytizing belief systems, where you have the external authority which will prescribe the belief, and that's the mandate. Proscribe, that is, you do this, don't do this, then you are bad, then you're good, you will be punished, and it penalizes and enforces. So it's handing out penalty also, right? So these attributes 1, 2, and 3, that is prescribe, proscribe, and penalize, these are the basic characteristics of the converting belief systems. Whereas for Dharma, it is selective, discourse, and self governing. Additionally, Dharma, we have a concept of karma. Now, without getting into details and technicalities, essentially it is as you sow, so you reap. Whereas the converting belief systems are pre-decided. If you have a belief, then you're going to heaven. It doesn't matter what you do, and the other fellows are anyway going to hell, right? So the other few ones which I have listed out here, Dharma obviously has multiplicity, whereas the converting systems are exclusivist. They are totalitarian because they say we will give all the solutions, including science, with which they fought, all the scientists and the scientific world till today. They are totalitarian. They are nihilist because they have to eliminate the kafir simply because the kafir doesn't have a belief, which is a religious belief. And the difference, see one word, how much difference does it make? See point number 8. Uh, in Sanatan Dharma, people are themselves considered divine. That is why you say Namaste. For example, so people can be named Lakshmi, Parvati, Shankar, and so on. But in the converting belief systems, you can only be a slave or sheep. You can be Abdullah, that is the slave of Allah. You can never be Allah or Jesus. There was a case recently in the US Supreme Court where some person wanted to name his son, I think, as Allah or Jesus, and that went to the Supreme Court. So I'm just telling you the kind of difference between Sanatan Dharma and the diametrically opposite system, which are the converting belief systems. Okay. So if you want to do a further study on the illogical structure of belief systems, there are references which I have given here. Now, see the circular logic. The belief is that the true God has issued an order, and the order is that the belief itself is mandatory, right? So, the belief is that the order has been issued, and the order is that the belief is prescribed and mandatory. And they are, as systems, they are quasi legal systems because they are handing out punishments. They are divine laws, and divine laws were set aside by the principle called secularism, where we went to, or rather, the Christian world went to laws made by the people, for the people, and to the people. So, divine laws were effectively outlawed, and that was the thing about secularism, that is, outlawing of the divine law systems. So, as per the Constitution, let us see. Now, like I said, it is very instructive to see what the Constitution says in Hindi. Now, let us just compare the word secular on top and the corresponding word below in boldface is Panth Nirpeksh. Okay, it is not Dharm Nirpeksh, and this is very important because everywhere we find this India, भारत धर्मनिरपेक्ष देश है, हम धर्मनिरपेक्ष हैं, हम धर्मनिरपेक्ष नहीं हैं, हम पंथ निरपेक्ष हैं, वी आर पंथ निरपेक्ष. And panth is a path in the dharmic system. It is not a path, it is not a cult, it is not a proselytizing religion. Panth refers to a dharmic system and a path in the dharmic system. That is what it is. So, secularism, as per our constitution, means that we don't discriminate between panth. But obviously, we have to stop the anti constitutional non-panths, which are the adharm and which are the systems which themselves violate Article 25, that is the converting belief systems. Okay. Now, here again, this is India, that is Bharat. Why I have put this up is because there are some people in the media who are trying to create an artificial divide. There is one India and there is one Bharat. No, constitutionally India, that is Bharat, and you see in Hindi here before Bharat Arthat India. Okay, so Bharat, first they write Bharat Arthat India. राज्यों का संघ है. So we are all sanghis as per the constitution, whether anybody likes it or not. And Bharat, that is India, is a federation, is not a federation of states, it is a Sangh. It is a union of states. Okay, it is not a federation. Again, this is one mistake uh, which was very popular in the narrative, but we are not a federation, we are a union, and we are all Sanghis as per the constitution. We are Bharatiya Sanghis. Now let's see what the Supreme Court of India has as its emblem and as its motto. Everyone can see that. Yato dharmas tato jaya. What does it mean? What does it mean? It means basically where there is dharma, there will be victory. And obviously for the Supreme Court to put this as its motto, as its emblem, obviously what the Supreme Court is trying to say, whether somebody, some of the my lords and justices today may not want to say it or acknowledge it or even agree with it. Basically what is being said here is that dharm Supreme Court ka or justice ka baap hai. Okay, it is not a formal statement, but you get the point basically. So now, the other thing which the justices have been doing and quoting, for example, in the Sabarimala judgment, okay, again, Article 25 is always there in the background, right? So, essential practices, this is what they keep talking about all the time. But the essential practices of Sanatan Dharma is choice, discourse, and self governing. Why are these essential? See, Sanatan Dharma has so much diversity and so many so seemingly self-contradictory practices and concepts. Like you have Vedic, Astic, Nastic, Tantric, Lokaya, Charvaka. You can have, Archana of Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, or you can deny it. You need not go to a temple. You can go to a temple. There's no prescription. You have free to choose what you want to do, right? So you have choice. And everything is discursive. There is no diktat, there is no fatwa, there is no decree, there is no second authority which will tell us, force us what to do and penalize us. That is the point. It's very important. So the entire system is discursive. Just to give you the effect of this, in the middle of the battlefield, that is Kurukshetra, Bhagwan Shri Krishna, he did not issue an adesh, that is an order to Arjun. The Bhagavad Gita it's a discourse. It is an updesh. Gita is an updesh. It is not an adesh. Unlike, for example, the Quran, which is a hukum. That is a hukum, means you had better do it or else. Or you have commandments or decrees in the church or in Christianity. And Arjun here, he himself realizes and then he does what he should do. Now, being Bhagwan Shri Krishna, he could have simply said, Arjun, अरे यार हम तुमको बोल रहे हैं हम भगवान है ये करो मेरा आदेश है ये do it. But that is not Sanatan Dharma, and that is the point. So the question is, so now the thing is that Sanatan Dharma, finally, if there's no external governing structure and penalizing structure and authority, we are self-governing. Dharma is self-governing. So what is the genesis of Yato Dharmastato Jaya? Does the court even today, is it following that? Just simply kept it as an emblem and gone to sleep? So, so that is the thing we have to understand. And what has happened is that the structure of a constitution and governance structures are basically uh, analogous to the Abrahamic structure. Like, for example, the church has been set aside, keep the church at a distance because of secularism, but now the court is there in its place in effect. So, but the point is for Sanatan Dharma, whether you have a church or a court, which is a de facto church of sorts, uh, how how can we admit that Sanatan Dharma is self-governing? There is no external authority. That is the point. And what is the genesis and what is the import of Yato Dharmas Tato Jaya? That is what we have to understand and follow, right? So this is what we have finally, that Bharat, that is India, is Panth Nirpeksh, and we are Dharm Sapeksh very much. We are Dharm Sapeksh, we are not Dharm Nirpeksh, right? And we have some, confusion, and we are incorrectly including, for example, Vam Panth. Vam Panth is anti-dharmic, it is anti-national for the most. It is not a Panth in Sanatan Dharma, okay? Vam Achar and Dakshin Achar are different ways in Sanatan Dharma, but not this so-called Vam Panth, which refers to the Reds or the Communists or the Naxals. Now, the question is, having had this discussion, what are the implications for Article 2630? Now, the question is 26 to 30 have the words religion and religious minorities, right? But in the first place, how can religion or religious minorities applied, how can this word apply to some religions which themselves in the first place are anti-constitutional and they are not admissible or they are not recognizable, or they themselves strike at Article 25 and Article 14, 15 on equality and make other violations. So the point is that the word religion and religious minorities can, of course, they can only apply to those religions, and therefore the analogous so-called religious minorities which are in the first place not doing something which are anti-constitutional, and they themselves can be allowed or admitted in the Constitution of India, right? So the scenario is basically, this is just, I'm giving you a broad picture. The organs of the state, whether it's the court, the polity, understanding in the people is low. The courts are interfering selectively with all the Hindus. We all know that. I don't want to get into a long discussion on that. So, so the point I'm trying to make is, we have the laws, we have the constitution, but there's no implementation. Like, to give you a simple thing about the loudspeaker laws, azan 5 times a day or whatever, noise pollution. The court wants to see pollution due to firecrackers and implement it during Deepavali, but this simple thing they don't want to implement. Then obviously vote bank politics, street power, anarchy, etc. And one of the worst things is that the government itself has usurped the control and finances of Hindus and Hindu temples. And this is a very important point. We have to actually fight this and get our temples back from the government. The other thing to notice is that geopolitics and world governance structures are basically Abrahamic. Okay, they are fashioned by the Abrahamics, which is the Christian states in the Christian structure, right? So we automatically end up, even if we don't think about it, end up doing something which invariably might or often is Abrahamic. Now, the last point is very important. Okay. So we have very tiny communities in India, like the Jews and Parsis, who have been living peacefully. Basically, on religious grounds, we have never had a problem between Hindus and Jews and Parsis. They don't even want the tag of minorities. They are not minorities. They are doing fairly well. And the Jews in Israel, they thanked the Hindus for keeping them safe for 1,000 years and so on and so forth. That was the first thing they said officially in their parliament or whatever that is called. Now, the problem arises only and only with the proselytizing, the converting religions, and they have existential issues with everyone else and also within themselves. As you can see in Afghanistan, Pakistan, it is essentially Muslims who are running away from Muslims of another kind of Islam, right? So they are fellow Muslims who are after and taking the lives or sex slaves or whatever have you, and they are fellow Muslims, they are fellow Afghans, they are their own brothers and sisters, but it's an existential fight for them. So the point is, it's the proselytizing religions and the conversion which is the key, which is the root of all these things, and they are the fellows who have a problem with everybody else, including themselves, and that is the point. Okay, so what can we do? So what we can do is basically see, an ideology has to be defeated ideologically. You don't fight it with a gun. But then you have to fight the concepts which I have put, the war of definitions and concepts. This is not a war as in an actual war, but a conceptual war. What are the definitions? The definitions are very different in both the systems. They are diametrically opposite to each other. We have dharma, and those systems, actually speaking, they are adharma. The converting systems are adharma, no less. And we must sanitize the language and prefer to use Indian bhasha, and obviously, treat the Western entire thing with a huge dose of salt. We have to have public awareness, build public pressure. This is important. See, because we have all the laws, we have everything, but even if we have it, the courts are going against us, the politics, the leadership, the narrative, everything is against the Hindus. So what is the difference? The difference is public pressure, and pressure on your leadership, pressure on the bureaucracy, pressure which is legal pressure, pressure which is on the roads, which is street pressure. And don't be defensive. Offense is the best defense. Hold your representatives wherever they are, whether it's politics or dharma or wherever, hold them accountable. And then the last 2 points: use the power of citizen arrest. I will just show that briefly. I mean, this is just as an example. As and when the situation warrants it, we should do it, but we should be prepared and we should be aware, we should know it, and we should do it. We should create public pressure around all these things. And one of the most important things is, of course, take back your temples. That is very, very, very important. Okay. So I'm just saying 153A, which is basically a cognizable and non-bailable offense, promoting enmity between different groups. So basically, it is the kafir, the infidel, who's a target of the proselytizing, the converting religions. And they are doing something which is unconstitutional, which violates the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They work as an extra constitutional authority. So obviously, they are hurting you. They are not letting you be yourself. Obviously, they are promoting enmity between, the group of believers who claim the exclusive truth, and all the non-believers, the rest of the people in the world, right? So this is 153A, which is cognizable and non-bailable, I think. So which has different parts. I've just mentioned one. Section 1 is about whoever, which is about the person. Then subsection 2 is about offenses committed in a place of worship, etc. uh, IPC 217 is, so this we come across this very often, public servant, for example, a policeman or somebody else, although the law is there, but then they do something else, they'll just say, no, 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 they'll say something which is quite the opposite and do that, right? But then we have to push it. The whole point is we have to apply our pressure, and then we can do this legally, or we can do it through public pressure and demonstrations or whatever means available at our disposal. 218 is framing an incorrect record. That is, if you file an FIR, for example, or some other record, right, with the intent to save a person from punishment. So the intent is to save the missionary from punishment, right? So for that, so then we can, or the dharmics can essentially intervene with the missionaries and use whatever sections of law are available. And this is one which is again important, that we have, all citizens in India have the power of citizen arrest, section 43 of the Criminal Procedure Code. Any private person may arrest or cause to be arrested any person. Okay. So any person can be any person who's doing anti-constitutional activities, which we have spoke about before, who commits a non-bailable and cognizable. So, for example, enmity against groups is non-bailable and cognizable, etc. Cause him, see the last line, second last line, boldface, cause him to be taken in custody, cause him. So you have to take him to the police station, or maybe cause him to be taken in custody, which is maybe the police commissioner's office, the home minister, whatever. So these are details, but the point is we have a lot of things which we can do. So the question is, what are the action items? We should get into action mode more and more, because finally a democracy is by the people. And this is the point where we are today. Democracy is by the people, and it is some people who are anarchists, who are anti-constitutional, etc., who are applying pressure everywhere, whether it is the court, the bureaucracy, or on the streets, and they are getting the things done, even though it violates the fundamental Article 25, it violates laws. Even then, they are getting their things done. and our things are not being done, the right things are not being done, so then, excuse me, the people have to get into the act, and we have to act now. That is where we are. So this is what it is. So I hope this presentation was clear to people. If there are questions, then we can go into a couple of questions.
Alokji.
Yeah, Alok, you can ask. I also want to welcome Jagdish ji here.
Namaste,
General
Jagdish ji.
Okay.
Sir, is it
Alok,
audible?
you can ask the questions, please.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I have one question, sir. Do the rights provided under Article 25 truly make India a secular country?
See, let me first say that there is no universally. There's an echo coming.
Mute yourself. Okay.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say is that uh, there's no universal, unique definition of secularism. Okay, so for example, in France it means one thing, in the UK it means one thing, in the US it means another thing, and indeed in India nobody knows what it means. The word secularism itself is not defined, and it has been defined. I showed you in the Hindi version of the Constitution of India as Panth Nirpeksh. So we have to take it as that. It is Panth Nirpeksh for us. Okay. So as far as Article 25 and our definition of secularism, if one may say so, is concerned, then Article 25 does not admit the converting religions. It cannot recognize those religions. And why are we concerned about the definition of secularism? Basically, what we want is that people should be free to have their beliefs and practices and not impinge on the beliefs and practices of the other citizen, the fellow citizen. That is essentially the point. And that Article 25 gives to all the citizens. If we look at what it means carefully, and if we look at what the Supreme Court judgment says carefully. Now, the narrative is quite the opposite, but the narrative is false.
Alok, you can ask a second question. Please.
Yeah, we can see, sir, there because of poverty, the conversion is happening. So, what is your opinion about this, sir? Because of poverty, there is a lot of conversion. We were seeing people are converted to Christianity. They say that they are poverty because of poverty. They don't want to convert. So, what is your opinion about this, sir?
So, see, there are two aspects to it. One is you're saying because of poverty, that is on one side, that is half the story. The other side is the people who are doing the conversion are committing an extra constitutional crime, so to speak. It's an extra constitutional activity, as we have seen, right? Because conversion is not a right which is granted to the other side. So, as far as the practicality on the poverty side is concerned, that we have to address using practical means. It's not only awareness, but also being practical, and what should we do to make those people sort of come out of their poverty. Come out in the sense, maybe you cannot do everything, but at least to some extent there should be a coupling. And in this respect, I must say one thing which is very, very important, that is about the temples. If we have if we take back control of our temples and the finances, how much money the temples have and how much money the government is taking from the temples every year, something like 4 or 5 lakh crores. The government controls effectively about 1 lakh plus temples in the country, and they pocket illegally some 4 to 5 lakh crores. Now, the cash circulation in the Indian economy is something like 15 lakh crores. And now you see 4 to 5 lakh crores the government is pocketing illegally. Who do you think owns that money, and who do you think should control it and use it for the benefit of the Hindu society, the poor people, or whoever else? We should take this back in our hands. So this is very important, practically speaking, and even ideologically speaking. So I hope that to some extent it answers your thing about the poor people. As far as the other side is concerned, they are not allowed. It is extra constitutional, and we must intervene. We must apply public pressure, and we must use the power of citizen arrest and intervene with the missionary and take him. If five people can't do it, 500 people take him, pick him up, take him to the Home Minister's office, and say, "This is what we think it is. Now you book him, put him behind bars." And we have to challenge the narrative using public pressure legitimately, of course, in a non-violent manner.
Gopi, you have any questions now?
No, sir. No, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, yes, please. Pankaj, like as I said, like the conversion is going on rampantly.
Yes.
There are some cases explicitly they use the conversion for the some of the reservation candidates. Once the conversion happens, is not. I mean, by default, he's not eligible for the reservation, isn't it?
Right. So again, they
And
are, they are becoming Dalit.
yeah,
This thing, yes,
yes. And the point is, these guys are. I mean, like they're placed in high profile jobs and high profile posts, and this can be a serious national security. And they're once they converted into other faith, their allegiance moves to the place where they are, like either it's like missionaries from, or like the Vatican or the West, whatever it is, or the Middle East.
yes.
Their loyalty moves to there, and it's a serious national offense. I mean, how to deal with this? Who are already into converted and high
Yes.
position, can they be removed?
See, so let me give you a actual case. Like, for example, we've seen many judges, and for example, the Sabarimala judgment by the Supreme Court, there was
Yes,
one
sir.
lady judge, Indira Banerjee, who I think gave the sensible dissenting opinion in the judgment, whereas the other four judges, I don't agree with their kind of judgment, right? But now the judges in the Supreme Court, they exist in the pleasure of the president. So technically, one can, the president can withdraw his pleasure, right? But then that means the prime minister, which means the public has to apply pressure. We have to create the narrative. That is one way of going about things, right? So finally, where we are, we have the laws, we have certain things. It's not that we don't have anything at all, but it's not working. And not only that, is working the opposite way. So we have to get into the act. Technically and legally, there are still ways and means to do it.
Okay. And other point is like you mentioned about 1977, like the social and secular votes have been included illegal. I mean, you didn't mention illegally, but to an extent, it looks like illegal by arresting all the leaders and implementing enforcing emergency.
42nd
So
Amendment, you're saying, yes.
yeah, and is that legal or illegal? One question. The second is, can that be removed?
See, I don't have a studied opinion on its legality, because it was nonetheless, it was passed in parliament, although the parliament itself was, as you say, you can doubt the legality of the process under those circumstances, right? But can it be removed? Of course, yes, it can be removed, because that word secular in the preamble was not existing. We were just, the preamble said sovereign democratic republic. So, of course, it can be removed. And my view is that we should get out of these Western and Christian terminologies, for example, secularism, etc., and forcibly try to fit our dharmic system into the Western framework and the Western concept. We should just get out of that and stay out of that. So we should get rid of this thing, secularism. Uh, that is it. We can remove it, and I think we should remove it.
Okay. So is the solution like will be like a modification of preamble, or like is it a
So
UCC
you
sort
can
of a
make
thing?
you
Or
can go for another amendment which undoes that that secular bit. Article 25
okay,
was there and it's still there, and as we have seen, the Article 25 itself is violated by those systems which define themselves as violating Article 25 in their own selves.
okay,
So they are anyway not allowed.
okay. So was the original preamble a Hindu Rashtra?
The okay, I can flash it on my screen if you just go back to the slides, but the preamble says Panth Nirpeksh. Okay, it doesn't say
Okay.
Dharma Nirpeksh. This is the important thing. See, even the Supreme Court, why is it saying Dharmast Yata Dharmastato Jaya? Why is the Supreme Court? It's not Tintin Comics, right? That it can put something which is a marketing thing, a label or some logo. It is the Supreme Court of India. So obviously Dharma has an important role in that. Otherwise, why will it be there on the Supreme Court and the motto of the Supreme Court? So we are Dharm Sapeksh, we are not Dharm Nirpeksh. And that is the absolutely wrong thing about the narrative today. And so there's a small anecdote which I want to just tell you in 1 minute. So this thing about Panth Nirpeksh and Dharm Nirpeksh, if I if I remember correctly, at that time, Indira Gandhi and the person on this side, the legal side, was Lakshmi Singhvi, okay, the eminent lawyer. And I think they wanted Dharm Nirpeksh, but LM Singhvi, he himself opposed it, and he said no, it is not Dharm Nirpeksh, it is Panth Nirpeksh, and therefore it is written as Panth Nirpeksh. And not only that, see, all these things go through a due process with the law ministry and this and that. There's so many filters. It's not simply some book, someone translating something. It's not like that. So we are Panth Nirpeksh and we are Dharm Sapeksh. That is it. And what is not included, what is not sapeksh, are the converting religions. They are adharm and they are not sapeksh. They are not allowed.
Okay, you can.
And the last question. I mean, Islam and Christianity are two major religions in the world. I mean, they're not
Yes.
minorities anywhere, and they're
Not
very
at all.
aggressive.
Yes.
And they're very aggressive in proselytizing and converting by sword and converting by whatever the methods they use it.
Yes.
And does any country have any reservation, or did any country declare Hindus as minorities in any of these countries, either Christian countries or the Islamic countries? Or forget about minorities, have they given equal rights in all the Islamic countries? Or do they have
Not
a
at all.
democracy? Do they have
No,
secularism?
see, by definition, in an Islamic country, you have to follow Islam, which says
Yeah.
believers and non-believers have hell on earth. That's it. So Islamic country can't give it. In fact, Islamic country is not giving it to fellow Muslims also. If you see Pakistan and Afghanistan, what is Taliban doing? Sex slaves. To whom is it doing? Fellow Afghan brothers and sisters. They are butchering them, isn't it? They are all Muslims. So you have Muslims running away from Islam itself, from an Islamic country. And that is the real nature of these anti-constitutional and adharmic systems, that they can't even live among themselves with themselves.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you for, I mean, like,
Good
it's
program,
really amazing.
it's fantastic.
And anybody else has any questions?
No, Gopi, you can close it.
All right. And one last small comment or question, like, is there a Sharia law going and a parallel law going on across in India right now?
De facto, yes. Actually, it should not be, but de facto in pockets, it does exist. That's the
Which
reality.
is illegal,
But
right?
there's one thing I want to say, that Mohammed bin Salman, who's I think the crown prince of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, he has just, practically removed the entire thing about hadiths. Okay. So it's only the Quran, and he says the hadiths are all, stories, keep it aside. So the Islamic
Hadith and
world,
Sirah is removed.
yes. So the Islamic
Okay.
world itself is in a volcanic eruption, so to speak,
Okay.
within themselves.
Thank you. Okay, that'd be great. Like, at least like the some peace. I mean, peace might prevail across the globe. Hopefully, with I mean, and also somebody was asking for changes in Quran also, I believe, right? Somebody was asking the changes in the Quran. I think we'll leave it that to the.
Yes. Rizvi, who has just become a Hindu, right?
And
But that is
I
not
mean, like,
possible because that is the immutable word of their true God, and nobody dare question it. Also, that's the
yes,
end of the story.
yes. And on behalf of VHS Karnataka, I thank Shri Pankaj Ji, for accepting our request and enlightening us on Article 25, and of course, like some of the, I mean, points like we are to ponder upon is like hukum and commandments from the Western world, and also the IPC sections that you mentioned about 153A, 217, 218, Section 43 of citizen arrest. These are very crucial. I think thank you for this, and at least like I mean, not all of them might have been known, or some of them might be knowing it, but not many might have been known about these articles. So on this Samvada, thank you Pankajji for enlightening us.
धन्यवाद सबको. Thank you, Gopi ji,
Dhanyawad.
Nikunj ji, Alok ji, and all the viewers. Mera dhanyawad. I'm very thankful and grateful for being on this show, and I hope we had a good discussion, and it actually propels us to take some very necessary action in public, legally, and without resorting to violence. We have to do that. Dhanyawad.
Thanks, Pankaj. Thanks a lot.
Thank you Nikunji. Thank you Alokji. Thank you Sanjeevji for joining. And thank you all our technical team, Shri Pages, Yushwaraya, Rakesh ji. And last but not the least, thank you all the wonderful viewers for making this successful and successful. Please stay safe, and please do visit and register at vhsindia.org for further amazing online sessions from VHS Karnataka and Samvada. Thank you. Jai Shri Ram.